creating a news agenda that reflects an unbiased view of Asian current affairs without relying on external news sources. Asia Vision, Asian news through Asian eyes.
Welcome to AVN, your go-to source for all the major news stories. I'm Hafiz Abdul Sattar, and for the next 30 minutes, we'll unpack the biggest headlines from around the globe. The World Bank voted to change its internal lending guidelines to free up $30 billion in additional lending capacity over the next decade.
World Bank President Ajay Banga stated that the World Bank, under pressure to do more to help developing countries cope with climate change, voted to change its internal lending guidelines to free up $30 billion in additional lending capacity over the next decade. Banga said the bank's International Bank for Reconstruction and Development (IBRD) arm would lower its equity to lending ratio by 1 percentage point to 18%, taking on a bit more risk in line with an independent report prepared by the Group of 20 G20 major economies. He said that the move, coupled with changes in the bank's pricing policies, means the bank has increased its lending capacity by a total of $150 billion by adjusting its balance sheet.
Just put it in context, there's something called the Capital Adequacy Framework in the G20 effort as part of the reform agenda when I joined, and that was meant to squeeze the balance sheet so you could take more out of it. Also meant to create new financial instruments that shareholders could contribute into. So a combination of squeezing the balance sheet through equity to loan ratios, but also through hybrid capital and portfolio guarantees has led to, I think, including what we just got today, probably close to $150 billion of more capacity to lend over the coming 7 to 10 years.
In his exclusive interview with Reuters, Banga said that former US President Donald Trump understands the value of international financial institutions and how their lending can lead to expanded markets for American companies overseas. Banga also weighed in on the potential cost of rebuilding from Israeli airstrikes on Gaza and what role the World Bank might play. He said that the damage to Gaza is now probably in the $14 to $20 billion range, and destruction from Israel's bombing of southern Lebanon will add to the regional total. Banga told that the war has had a relatively small impact on the global economy, but a significant widening of the conflict would draw in other countries that are larger contributors to global growth, including commodity exporters.
Israel's military says that 2 UN peacekeepers were wounded by an Israeli strike near the watchtower in South Lebanon while blast shook the peacekeepers' main base in the area for the second time in 48 hours as Israeli forces battled Hezbollah.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and Western countries condemned the attacks. The UNIFIL force called it a serious development and said the security of UN personnel and property must be guaranteed. France summoned Israel's ambassador and issued a statement with Italy and Spain calling such attacks unjustifiable. US President Joe Biden said he was asking Israel not to hit the UNIFIL forces. In Gaza, medics told Reuters at least 13 Palestinians were killed late on Friday by Israeli strikes on a home in Jabalia, where Doctors Without Borders says thousands of people are trapped a week after Israel launched an offensive there to stop Hamas militants from regrouping. The Israeli military said air raid sirens sounded in central Israel and 2 drones were detected from Lebanon late on Friday. It said it successfully intercepted 1 drone, but 1 building sustained some damage. The Israeli military said 2 peacekeepers had been hurt by Israeli fire as it was engaging Hezbollah and expressed deep concern. It said they had been warned hours earlier to take shelter. A Hezbollah statement late on Friday said that the Israeli military had failed in its attempts to advance into southern Lebanon and was facing significant resistance that had resulted in heavy Israeli losses. It said the Israeli army was using settler homes in several northern Israeli towns as gathering points and that Hezbollah considered them targets. The conflict between Israel and Hezbollah militants erupted 1 year ago when the Iranian-backed group began launching rockets at northern Israel in support of Hamas at the start of the Gaza war. It has intensified in recent weeks with Israel bombing southern Lebanon, Beirut's southern suburbs, and the Bekaa Valley, killing many of Hezbollah's top leaders and sending ground troops across the border. Hezbollah, for its part, had fired rockets deeper into Israel. The Middle East remains on high alert for further escalation, awaiting Israel's response to an Iranian missile barrage on October 1st. According to the Lebanese government, Israel's expanded operation has displaced more than 1.2 million people, saying that more than 2,100 people have been killed and 10,000 wounded in over a year of fighting. The toll does not distinguish between civilians and combatants, but includes scores of women and children.
The World Telecommunications Standardization Assembly 2024, one of the most significant global events in telecommunications, was launched by India's PM Narendra Modi in New Delhi on Tuesday.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated one of the most significant global events in telecommunications, the World Telecommunication Standardization Assembly 2024 in New Delhi on Tuesday. It is for the first time that the ITU WTSA is being hosted in India and the Asia Pacific. Hosting the event will provide the country an opportunity to play a key role in shaping the global telecom agenda and to set the course for future technologies. Prime Minister Modi also inaugurated 8th India Mobile Congress 2024, Asia's largest technology expo. The Prime Minister inspected the exhibition along with India's Communications Minister. While addressing the event, Prime Minister Modi and India's digital vision worked on 4 pillars: cheaper devices, connectivity reaching all corners, affordable data and digital first.
International 6G Symposium was organized at IMC 2024. The advent of 6G technology promises to be a transformative force, revolutionizing not only how we communicate, but also reshaping industries and society at large.
Technology, media and telecommunication industry leaders from across the world converged in the India Mobile Congress to deliberate on the global 6G programs. The respective national strategies for 6G and focus areas will be discussed at length in the event.
We followed the world in fortune. We marched with the world in 5G. But when we work with all of you together across the globe, it is our aspiration that in collaboration with you, we will lead the world in 6G.
India has achieved the fastest rollout of 5G networks globally. It now stands at the cusp of becoming the leading contributor to the 6G revolution.
We have brought the various forums and institutions that are working on 6G already to come for an open dialogue, and the intent is to see how we can promote an open collaborative research by which India's requirements are embedded into what their thinking is.
The International Symposium also saw 5 new Memorandum of Understanding signed, taking the tally of overall MOUs signed by Bharat 6G Alliance to 8.
It's a very good step to have signed this MOU with the Bharat 6G Alliance, because it shows that we all work jointly towards the same objectives to achieve global standards, to achieve affordability, availability, ubiquitous connectivity, and also simplicity.
We have different liaisons with other organizations, and the Bharat 6G Alliance is the newest partner, and we are very much looking forward and try to shape industrial 6G and future together with Bharat 6G.
New cutting-edge research, key architectural principles and emerging technologies that will shape the 6G landscape in India and the world found a reference at the symposium.
Energy consumption is a big element of mobile networks, and we want to make with our use cases and application, we want to make the network, we want to make the planet more sustainable. But we have to get down with the level of energy that we are consuming.
The future promises to be seamless and will surely empower people at large with the advent of 6G. The technology also has the potential to bridge the urban-rural gap effectively.
India's Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Union Labour Minister Manshukh Mandaviya jointly launched the e-Migrate V 2.0 web portal and app on Monday, which will facilitate Indians finding work in foreign countries. This is a new beginning for empowering the Indian migrant workers.
E-Migrate V 2.0 web portal and app launch in the national capital is a symbol of a wonderful symbiotic coordination between multiple ministries. This portal and app is now a symbol of protecting our workers in the foreign land. E-Migrate project is a transformational initiative aimed at making the e-migration process easy, organized and humane through this e-governance platform.
The launch of e-Migrate portal V 2.0 is a testament to our continuing efforts to create a safer, more transparent and inclusive mobility for Indian labour and marks a significant milestone in our efforts to safeguard the welfare and interests of our citizens. It also aligns with Goal 10 of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, which promotes facilitation of orderly, safe, regular and responsible migration and mobility of people.
This new web portal helps bridge the connect between employers and employees. It's multilingual and has linkages with multiple platforms like DigiLocker and Umang. This also removes the dangers of fake recruitment agents, as only those registered with the portal are part of it.
इंडिया में ब्रेन पावर और मैन पावर की ना कभी कमी थी ना कभी कमी है। देश के युवाओं को देश में ही नहीं लेकिन अपनी क्षमता अपनी स्किल के आधार पर उसको वैश्विक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिले और उसमें सरकार गवर्नमेंट उसको सहयोग करे, ये बहुत आवश्यक होता है।
This simplifies the e-migration journey. Now the employment seeker can check his application status, search for recruitment agent and foreign employers online. This portal and app will help submit grievances and access relevant information, all at the click of a button.
CEO of Boeing India Salil Gupta talked about increasing opportunities in the defense sector as India-US ties deepen in this sector.
We are talking about self-reliant India as far as the defense sector is concerned, and India and US are getting closer and closer. And I have with me Salil Gupta, who is the CEO of Boeing India. How do you find this opportunity with the oldest and the largest democracies getting together for a safer world?
It has strengthened tremendously over the last 20 years and has gone from 0 to over $20 billion of defense industrial trade between the two countries. And it is very much a two-way street. You have Apache fuselages made here in India. You have 737 tail fins made here in India. And that's just Boeing. My colleagues at Lockheed Martin and General Atomics and Pratt & Whitney all have large industrial engagements here in India for the world. And I think that just shows the strength of this US-India industrial partnership.
Now, as an Indian CEO in Boeing, how do you find Prime Minister's vision of a self-reliant India?
I mean, it's certainly a goal that is part of his long-term vision, and it is one that I think is going to come to fruition in the very near term.
IP is a big challenge as far as getting closer. So what do you have said on that?
From a corporate standpoint, you can use subsidiary structures. Boeing has Boeing India Private Limited as an example of that. And we do a lot of our work here through BIPL. But you can also use joint venture structures to protect your intellectual property. Now, as it relates to tech transfer, that's a different story. As India and the US have grown closer together, more and more tech has transferred to India. It very much is a two-way street, and it's because of the trust between the two countries on issues like IP.
So there you heard Salil Gupta. It is a two-way street, and definitely it's the trust between the two democracies that India and US are getting closer as far as defense ties are concerned. With Saurabh in Delhi, this is Vishal Beris for TT India.
Santosh Jha, the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, called for a shift in mindset to overcome past hesitations and actively pursue common goals. He was speaking at the 45th National Conference of CA Sri Lanka.
India's envoy to Sri Lanka has called for a shift in mindset to overcome past hesitations and actively pursue common goals. Santosh Jha, the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, emphasized the importance of a robust partnership between India and Sri Lanka, highlighting the interviewed destinies of the two nations. Speaking on the need for collaboration at the 45th National Conference of CA Sri Lanka, the High Commissioner underscored the shared geography, history and future that bind the two countries.
We must work in hand and grow and prosper together. Like it or not, we are naturally intertwined and interlinked by geography, history, tradition, and by our future. We are irreplaceable, indispensable, and inextricable as partners.
High Commissioner Jha called for a shift in mindset to overcome past hesitations and actively pursue common goals. He noted the rapid changes and complexities of the modern world, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region, which has become a hub of global growth and dynamism.
The Indo-Pacific today is the center of activity. It is the epicenter of global growth and dynamism. If one looks at the G20, the top 20 economies of the world, there are many more Indo-Pacific economies in the list than there were a few decades ago.
Highlighting India's economic trajectory, the High Commissioner mentioned predictions that India could become the world's second largest economy by 2050. He pointed out that India's Prime Minister has set a target for the country to become a developed nation by 2047, marking 100 years of independence. He emphasized the strategic opportunity for Sri Lanka as India's closest maritime neighbor to integrate with India's growth engine and leverage this relationship for its own economic revival. He also advocated for a connectivity corridor between India and Sri Lanka to enhance access to global markets and opportunities. High Commissioner Jha also elaborated on India's people-centric foreign policy towards Sri Lanka. He highlighted that the benefits to the people are the primary benchmark of India's efforts. He also reaffirmed India's support for Sri Lanka's debt restructuring efforts, securing IMF support, and extending bilateral financial support to overcome immediate challenges.
The number of people affected by the heavy rains has risen to 160,093.
The report from the Disaster Management Center indicates that 9,591 individuals remain in 70 safe locations. Tragically, 3 people have lost their lives due to the adverse weather conditions. In other developments, the Provincial Director of Education announced that all schools in Colombo, Kampaha and Kelaniya zones, which were not operating as safety centers, will reopen. Additionally, the Department of Irrigation reported that the flood threat from some rivers is now receding. The landslide warnings were also issued for several divisional secretariats in 7 districts.
China deploys fighter jets and warships to encircle Taiwan in drills Beijing said were aimed at sending a stern warning to separatist forces on the self-ruled island.
Beijing has not ruled out using force to bring Taiwan under its control, and Monday's drills represent its 4th round of large-scale war games in just over 2 years. The United States, US, and China's actions were unwarranted and risk escalation as it called on Beijing to act with restraint. Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te, who took office in May, has been more outspoken than his predecessor, saying when, in defending Taiwan's sovereignty, angering Beijing, which calls him a separatist. Lai vowed Monday to protect democratic Taiwan and safeguard national security, while the Defense Ministry said it dispatched appropriate forces in response to the drills. AFP journalists near the Hsinchu Air Force Base in the north of Taiwan saw 12 fighter jets take off on Monday. Beijing said its exercises served as a stern warning to the separatist acts of Taiwan independence forces. The drills, dubbed Joint Sword 2024B, are testing troops' joint operation capabilities, according to Captain Li Ji, spokesman for the Chinese military's Eastern Theater Command. They are taking place in areas to the north, south, and east of Taiwan Island. The drills are focusing on subjects of sea-air combat readiness patrol, blockade on key ports and areas. They also practiced an assault on maritime and ground targets. The Liaoning Aircraft Carrier Group, with its troops of Army, Navy, Air Force, and Rocket Force, was also involved. The previous large-scale drills held in May, 3 days after Lay's inauguration, were called Joint Sword 2024A and lasted 2 days. China's Coast Guard was also dispatched to conduct inspections around the island.
China announces that it will significantly increase government debt issuance to offer subsidies to people with low incomes, support the property market, and replenish state banks' capital as it pushes to revive sputtering economic growth.
Without providing details on the size of the fiscal stimulus being prepared, Finance Minister Lan Fon told a news conference there will be more counter-cyclical measures this year. Flanked by Vice Ministers of Finance, Lan said that the Ministry of Finance, together with relevant departments, has resolutely implemented this initiative, taking a series of measures to issue local government bonds to replace existing government debts. Lan said Beijing will support local governments to resolve their debt issues, adding that they still have a combined 2.3 trillion yuan, $325.5 billion to spend in the last 3 months of the year, including debt quotas and unused funds. Lan added that the local governments will be allowed to repurchase unused land from property developers. Low wages, high youth unemployment, and a feeble social safety net means China's household spending is less than 40% of annual economic output, some 20 percentage points below the global average. Investment by comparison is 20 points above. The world's second largest economy faces strong deflationary pressures due to a sharp property market downturn and frail consumer confidence, which have exposed its over-reliance on exports in an increasingly tense global trade environment. A wide range of economic data in recent months has missed forecasts, raising concerns among economists and investors that the government's roughly 5% growth target this year was at risk and that a longer-term structural slowdown could be in play.
SpaceX successfully fires the first stage booster of its Starship mega rocket back to the launch pad after a test flight, a technical tour de force that furthers the company's quest for rapid reusability.
The Super Heavy booster had blasted off attached to the uncrewed Starship rocket minutes earlier, then made a picture-perfect control return to the same pad in Texas, where a pair of huge mechanical chopsticks reached out from the launch tower to bring the slowly descending booster to a halt, according to a live stream from Elon Musk's SpaceX company. Not long afterward, the upper stage of Starship splashed down as planned in the Indian Ocean, a development saluted by Musk on X. The successful catching of the booster at its Texas launch pad had company staffers erupting in cheers. Liftoff occurred in clear weather from the SpaceX facility in southern Texas. During its last flight in June, SpaceX achieved its first successful splashdown with Starship, a prototype spaceship that Musk hopes will one day carry humans to Mars. U.S. space agency NASA, which congratulated SpaceX on its successful test, is also keenly awaiting a modified version of Starship to act as a lander vehicle for crewed flights to the moon under the Artemis program later this decade. SpaceX said its engineers have spent years preparing and months testing for the booster catch attempt, with technicians pouring tens of thousands of hours into building the infrastructure to maximize their chances for success. Teams were monitoring to ensure thousands of criteria were met both on the vehicle and the tower before any attempt to return the booster. Had the conditions not been satisfied, it would have been redirected for a splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico as in previous tests. Instead, having been given the green light, the returning booster decelerated from supersonic speeds and the powerful chopstick arms embraced it.
And that's all we have for this week's AVN. We'll meet you again next week with more updates from around the globe. Have a good day.
Creating a news agenda that reflects an unbiased view of Asian current affairs without relying on external news sources. Asia Vision, Asian news through Asian eyes.
ಹಫ್ತಾ ನಿಮಗಿನ ದಾಯರು ಏಕಿ ದಾಯರಾತಕು ರಾಜ್ಯಗೆ ಮಶಹುಗಾವಿಸ್ ಎತಕ್ ಕಮೆ ಹಿಂಗಾಗೆ